What's it now?
Look at these.
Those are dragon tracks.
Yeah, because everyone knows dragon tracks are almost indistinguishable from those of an articulated lorry.
Are you going to arrest Dr. No?
Well, someone is. We can't have him trying to kill everyone who comes here.
He doesn't just try.
Hmm?
I'm pretty sure he killed my father.
It's a shame that Honey's mention of Dr. No being responsible for the death of her father doesn't really go anywhere. It reinforces a mystery around Dr. No, sure, but it doesn't come to anything in the climax. If anything, it makes it all the more curious exactly why Honey is on the island in the first place if she's convinced her own father was killed by the guy who owns the island. Our heroes then come into contact with the dragon, or tractor with a flamethrower as I like to call it. Quarrel is sadly killed by the flames, and while upsetting, it's not entirely surprising. I mean, come on, Quarrel, a bright red t-shirt, really? Why not just strap a neon bullseye to the front of your chest? Our surviving heroes are taken to the base at Crab Key and disinfected of radiation. Apparently, all it takes to eradicate high levels of radiation is a good soapy shower. If only someone had let all those Chernobyl residents know it's that easy. Here we get a glimpse of Honey Rider's pussy galore, or so we think. Alas, Bond fans, Ursula Andrews was not completely naked while filming this scene, as we can see here. It's amusing that after Bond and Honey shower, they end up in what is essentially the Crab Key Hotel, with a couple of very pleasant hostesses, breakfast, and hot coffee. It's a shame Dr. No is so insistent on killing everyone who comes to the island, as this hotel could be a nice little earner for him. The man's clearly in the wrong trade. World domination isn't his thing. His talents clearly lie in the hospitality sector. Luxurious. Elegance. Opulence. Relaxation. Crab Key. The #1 hotel complex in Jamaica, where everything is built to ensure you can't escape. Ensure your happiness. On arriving at Crab Key Luxury Hotel Resort, you'll be welcomed by our beautiful sisters, Lily and Rose, who are here to make your stay as comfortable as possible. You'll then be shown to your spacious quarters with around-the-clock room service at your disposal, and incredibly spacious showering facilities. You'll be so relaxed, you'll immediately fall to sleep. You will dine in intimate surroundings 200 feet below sea level, observing poorly back-projected stock footage of fish as you eat. Crab Key Luxury Hotel Resort provides a plethora of tranquil activities and sights for you and your family, including walks to the nearby cascading waterfalls, sheltered swimming pools, and wildlife safaris. Crab Key offers you an ideal oasis when you just want to get away from it all. After being drugged, Bond and Honey get dressed and are taken down to Dr. No's private chamber, where our main villain is finally revealed an hour and a half into the film. Played by Joseph Wiseman, Dr. No actually gives Bond his first real shaken not stirred vodka martini of the series. Oh, a little tidbit of information for you here. The picture that Bond pauses at there is Goya's portrait of the Duke of Wellington, which was stolen from the National Gallery in London in 1961. However, in reality, it was not stolen by a Chinese criminal mastermind, but rather a disabled British pensioner who used the theft to highlight his displeasure with the BBC licence fees. Over dinner, which seems to consist of just a few grapes, Dr. No reveals that he is a member of SPECTRE, which stands for
Special Executive for Counterintelligence, Terrorism, Revenge, Extortion.
Wow. Now there's a mouthful.
The good doctor also reveals to Bond his dastardly plan to disrupt the Project Mercury space launch from Cape Canaveral with his atomic-powered radio beam.
Tell me, does the toppling of American missiles really compensate for having no hands?
Ooh, meow, 007. Any more bitchiness like this, and this could turn into the Real Housewives of Crab Key. I actually really like this exchange of dialogue between Bond and No. It's a great tense scene, and it almost makes up for the fact we haven't seen Dr. No at all until this point. Bond has a couple of fantastic lines in this scene too, including one of my favourites in the entire series.
World domination. Same old dream.
Bond and Honey are separated, Bond waking up in a metal cell, but fortunately there's a vent right there for him to climb through. Bond enters the vent and ends up facing some of the most fearsome foes he's ever encountered, including water and weird electronic sounding noises. The scene also features the series' most obvious use of a stunt double until A View to a Kill. Bond disguises himself in a radiation suit and finds his way into No's command center. This set provides a glimpse and hint into what Ken Adam is really capable of, and while a fine set, it's clear that this film has the lowest budget of all the Bond films, as it's not quite as grand as what we'd eventually become accustomed to. Bond begins overheating the reactor, thwarting our villain's plans and sending the base into meltdown.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Sorry, could you repeat that, Dr. No? I didn't quite catch that.
5, 4.
All the shut down.
5, 4.
All the minutes in front of the line are shut down. It's here Bond and No have their showdown, and while it is exciting, it's kind of disappointing as well to see No killed so quickly and easily. I'd have liked to have seen a bit more of a fight, especially considering No's metal hands, which you would think would make for an interesting fight sequence. The hands are ultimately the villain's undoing, however, as he can't pull himself out of the radioactive water. And now it's off to rescue Honey, who is being paddling pulled to death. What? I mean, it's barely past her ankles. Is she really in such an immediate danger? Anyway, the pair escape and run behind these canisters, where Bond enters 6'2" and leaves 5'7". Maybe I was a bit too harsh on A View to a Kill when it came to the obvious stunt doubles. Crab Key explodes as the pair escape and get jiggy with it on the boat before Felix turns up and saves them, but apparently Bond would rather be left alone in the middle of the ocean with Honey. Well, who wouldn't, to be honest? We then fade out some uncharacteristic music, which makes me thankful John Barry took over the composer duties for the next few films solo. So, that's Dr. Vanilla. I mean, Dr. No, and yeah, it's alright. I'll admit I only ever usually watch this one when I'm doing a full Bondathon. If I'm just chilling at home and, I think, yes, I'll pop on a Bond film now. I'll usually go for Goldfinger, Octopussy, Tomorrow Never Dies, Skyfall, and while I certainly don't consider Dr. No the weakest of the films, it's always one of the last ones I actually consider watching. Heck, I've even put on Thunderball and Quantum of Solace more than Dr. No, and I consider those two the weakest Bond films ever. I guess it's probably because Dr. No is just, well, vanilla. That's the word I have to use when I describe this film. All the films that come after this improve on almost every single aspect of the formula. Dr. No is a jack of all trades, but king of none. The formula is more or less here, but it'll be improved upon significantly in future installments, except for maybe one element. While I don't think Sean Connery would evolve into just being James Bond until the next two films, I think here he's pretty frigging great. Indeed, the thing I noticed the most about Dr. No revisiting it after a barrage of recent Craig film viewings is just how much time the film spends giving us an insight into James Bond as a character, something lacking in many installments. It's interesting that there are quite a few scenes where we really learn stuff about Bond as a man in his job. Ursula Andress as Honey Rider is just the quintessential Bond girl. However, that doesn't necessarily mean from a filmic perspective that her character is the most necessary, I guess? Indeed, she does nothing. Like, really nothing. You could remove that character from the film, and other than losing an aesthetically pleasing visual, we wouldn't really be missing all that much. But then Bond has to have someone to shag at the end of the film, and Ursula Andress does play the character well, and she's a classic. You couldn't have Dr. No without her, really. From that perspective, at least. Other supporting characters are a real mixed bag. John Kitzmiller is great as Quarrel, but that's more a testament to Kitzmiller's likability rather than how the character is written or presented. Jack Lord plays Felix Leiter and is one of the better actors to play the part, but Felix himself doesn't really do much other than turn up a day late with the cavalry at the end of the film. Joseph Wiseman is okay. I don't know, I think I like Dr. No as a villain quite a lot, but I don't know how much of that comes from things outside of this film. Like, I love Dr. No in the video games as a playable character, in various books, I like reading about him, I think he looks really cool, and the potential is there for a fantastic villain. He's just not used properly in the film. He's in, like, what, 2-3 scenes, he doesn't have a good showdown with Bond, his grand plan is odd and quite small in scale. There's definitely potential there for a super cool villain, it's just kind of squandered, really. I'm disappointed with the villain's henchmen and women in this film, too. Most of them just kind of disappear. The Three Blind Mice, Miss Tara the photographer, Sisters Lily and Rose. Dent is the only satisfactory henchman of the pack and the only one with a satisfactory end. I'm not a huge fan of the music for this film, and to be honest, I'm glad that John Barry took on the helm solo for the next few installments, and it's only really when, you know, we get to the next few films that we really solidify the sound of James Bond. The music in Doctor No is just kind of sporadic and weird and loud. And there are literally, like, only 2 songs in Jamaica, apparently. There's Underneath the Mango Tree and Jump Up. No one acknowledges or sings anything but those 2 songs. But you know what? Monty Norman did give us one piece of almost God-given music in the form of the James Bond theme itself, so one can't complain too much. I've mentioned my distaste of the editing, but I'll talk more about that when we get to Thunderball. Terence Young's direction and the camera work are all well and good, but again, it just feels very lackluster when compared to other series entries. The writing too suffers from this, and I'm not sure how much of this is down to the source material, because I haven't read the Doctor No novel yet, but the story spends a lot of time meandering about in the middle, and there are a few moments of questionable logic from some characters, but, you know, it's not as glaring as in other installments, and it doesn't detract from a lot of the fun of the film, and yeah, there is a lot of fun to be had in Doctor No. But it's hard to hold that against Doctor No, because obviously when it was released, those entries weren't released yet. It's just a weird one. With most film series, I think you'd say to someone who hasn't seen any of them, well, you know, start at the beginning. You would say to someone who hasn't seen any Harry Potter, yes, you must start with The Philosopher's Stone. Star Wars, you would say, yes, start with A New Hope, and work your way through chronologically that way. Where, with Doctor No, I don't think I'd recommend it as any Bond virgin's first Bond film. I'd probably recommend Goldfinger for that, but Doctor No is undoubtedly a necessary viewing to experience the roots of the film James Bond, and, you know, not to dog on the film too much, because there are some really excellent scenes in there, including, you know, obviously Honey coming out of the water, Bond killing Dent, Bond's fight at the beginning with the chauffeur. It's all good stuff. I just happen to think there was better stuff to come in the form of the next film in the series, which we'll be looking at next time, From Russia with Love.